Hi, this is Tay,
And this is Shreya.
and our topic is grade level and drug use. So, drug use is the use of selected substances, including alcohol, tobacco products, drugs, inhalants, and other substances that can be consumed, inhaled, injected, or absorbed into the body with detrimental effects. Illicit drugs are drugs that are illegal to have, and the non medical use of drugs that are legally available. The Addiction Research Institute in Ontario study published in Health Education and Behavior in December of 1997 said it is believed 16 is the pivotal year for adolescents who face increasing peer pressure to experiment with drugs and alcohol. Those who started drug use before 15 were more likely to continue in their addiction than those who start after the age of 17 to 19.
We chose this topic because while volunteering, we encountered many people in need who have been affected by drug use. We also grew interested in this topic because we are teenagers ourselves and have seen many people around us be susceptible to drugs. We wanted to see just how many teenagers across different grade levels in the US used illicit drugs such as marijuana. Therefore, we decided to look at different grade levels to see which age group to target to lessen the harm of drug use in the long run. Drug use can affect many things, including your grades, the probability of graduating high school, and your overall health. It can also lead to things such as homelessness and psychiatric disorders. Studies have shown that drug use that starts earlier is more likely to turn into drug abuse as well.
We used data from yearly surveys conducted by National Institute of Drug Abuse, which used cross-sectional surveys and a multi-stage random sampling procedure. Stage 1 consisted of the selecting of particular geographic areas. Stage 2 was the selection of one or more high schools in each area with probability proportionate to the student enrollment size for the grade in question. Stage 3 was the selection of corresponding grade level students in each school.
This leads us into our first test, which is a chi-square of homogeneity, and our statistical question is there a difference in the population proportion of drug use distribution, such as marijuana, illicit drug without marijuana, or abstainers, of all 8th, 10th, and 12th grade students in public schools between 2018 and 2022? For our hypothesis for H of O, there is no difference in the population proportion of drug use distribution of all 8th, 10th, and 12th grade students in public schools between 2018 and 2022. And our alternate hypothesis, there is a difference in the population proportion of drug use distribution of all 8th, 10th, and 12th grade students in public school between 2018 and 2022. And our significance level is A is equal to 0.05. This is the data that we used that contain the percentages for each category and grade level. We multiplied the percentages by the sample sizes shown earlier and constructed them into a table that will be shown in the next slide.
So the tables here show the expected and observed counts for 8th, 10th, and 12th grade. For assumptions, we can assume simple random sample, and as you can see, all the expected counts are greater than 5. And then using the sample sizes shown earlier, we tested for independence for each grade and year.
So as you can see, we have used the chi-squared equation shown on the top. So for 8th grade, the chi-square value is 41.6290 and the p-value is approximately 0. For 10th grade, our chi-square value is 278.8459. The p-value is once again 0. And for 12th grade, the chi-square value is 157.5624 and the p-value is approximately 0. Since p-value is less than alpha, which is 0.05, we reject the null hypothesis. We have convincing evidence that there is a difference in the population proportion of drug use distribution, marijuana use, illicit drugs without marijuana use, and abstainers of all 8th, 10th, and 12th grade students in public schools between 2018 and 2022. So what does this mean? There is a noticeable change in the proportion of drug use among 8th, 10th, and 12th grade students attending public schools between 2018 and 2022. Because the chi-square value for 8th graders is the lowest, we should target 8th graders more when educating about substance abuse. A possible reason for 8th graders having the lowest chi-square value is because they are more susceptible to influence than older students who may be more mature.
For our second test, we use simple linear regression, and our statistical question is, what is the predicted percentage of 8th, 10th, and 12th grade students in 2024 using illicit drugs? Underneath, you can see the data that we used, and we used the data from years 2000 to 2022. So after plotting the data, this is the scatter plot and its residual plot for 8th graders engaged in illicit drugs. And using the standard deviation that we calculated, we determined that the point for 2020 is an outlier that can be explained by COVID-19. So we plotted the scatter plot and residual plot again for 8th graders without the 2020 data point, and we also plotted the scatter plots and residual plots for 10th and 12th graders and found no outliers, so we kept the 2020 data point in for those. Based on this data, we can assume a representative sample and that it's independent of previous years. The scatter plots show an approximate linear pattern, and the residual plots show random variability of illicit drug use for each year.
Because the residual plots showed no apparent pattern, we concluded that the linear model was the best fit to summarize the data and calculate the predicted value for 2024 for all 3 years. As you can see on the table for 8th grade, we calculated the predicted value for 2024 with and without the 2020 data point. With the 2020 point, the model overestimated the predicted value for 2024. There is a very strong negative linear relationship between the percentage of 8th graders using illicit drugs and the number of years since 2020 of R is equal to negative 0.8271. For 10th and 12th graders, there is a strong negative linear relationship between the percentages of 10th and 12th graders using illicit drugs and the number of years since 2020, with R values of negative 0.7647 and negative 0.7748 respectively. Using the linear model regression line, the expected value in 2024 for the percentage of 8th, 10th, and 12th graders in public schools in the U.S. illegally using drugs is 15.78%, 30.01%, and 44.02% respectively. 68.41% of the variability in the percentage of 8th graders using illicit drugs can be explained by its relationship with the year. 58.47% of the variability in the 10th graders using illicit drugs can be explained by its relationship with the year, and similarly, 60.03% of the variability in the percentage of 12th graders can also be explained by its relationship with the year.
So for our third test, we did the 2-prop-C test, and the question is the population proportion of 8th, 10th, and 12th grade students who choose to abstain from illicit drugs in 2022 greater than the population proportion of 8th, 10th, and 12th graders who use illicit drugs? And for the data below, we only use the 2022 data. For the population proportion, we let P1 be the population proportion of 8th, then 10th, then 12th grade students who abstained from illicit drugs in 2022, and we let P2 be the population proportion of 8th, then 10th, then 12th grade students who used illicit drugs in 2022. For our null hypothesis, we have HO is P1 minus P2 equals 0, and for our alternative hypothesis, it's P1 minus P2 is less than 0. And our significance level is A equals 0.05. For assumptions, we can assume a representative sample and it being independently selected. And using the sample sizes shown in the presentation earlier, we tested for independence. And for normality, we used n times 1 minus p and n times p for all the data as seen in the next slide.
The table shows the percentage of abstainers and users of illicit drugs for 8th, 10th, and 12th graders. This is the equation we used to calculate p hat for the 3 grades. We used p hat to calculate the respective z-scores. For 8th grade, the z-score is 35.9026 and the p-value is 0. For 10th grade, the z-score is 21.5529 and the p-value is 0. For 12th grade, the z-score is negative 8.2308 and the p-value is 0.8452. So for 8th and 10th grade, since the p-value is less than the significance level, we reject the null. We have convincing evidence that there is a difference in the population proportion of 8th and 10th graders who abstain from illicit drugs compared to 8th and 10th graders who use illicit drugs.
For 12th graders, since the p-value is greater than the significance level, we fail to reject the null. We don't have convincing evidence that there is a difference in the population proportions of 12th graders who abstain from illicit drugs and 12th graders who use illicit drugs.
So what does this mean? While the proportion of abstainers are higher for 8th and 10th grade, it is lower for 12th graders. From 10th to 12th grade, there is a change leading to a large increase in people choosing to engage in illicit drugs, for example, age difference. And we should be putting more efforts to be focusing on 10th to 12th graders to increase the number of abstainers from illicit drugs. What can be done? We can contact organizations that fight teenage drug use, we can host seminars and encourage safe habits, and we can continue to monitor 12th grade drug behavior.
So for the conclusion, 8th, 10th, and 12th grade students all engage in various forms of drugs, and we need to be advocating for lesser drug use equally on all levels. All of our tests indicate a difference in the number of students partaking in illicit drugs or marijuana across all 3 grades, but the numbers are still too high, especially for 8th graders who would be 13 to 14 years old. The number of abstainers decreases as the grade level increases, which can simply be due to age and being exposed to new environments.
So for some of the problems we faced, we should be aware of extrapolation for the second test because we were estimating for 2024. In the second test, we faced a problem with using either the linear model or the quadratic model. For the first test, there were multiple sample sizes from different years, so we used the sample sizes given on the 2022 report for monitoring the future. In the data given, there were too many drugs to test, so we used marijuana, illicit drugs without marijuana, and abstainers for test 1.
Reflecting on everything we've seen so far, the effectiveness of current strategies seems to be working on some levels, but further policies are needed to see a significant decline among all grades, like more funding for teen youth programs, among other things. For further studies, we could go more into depth on the differences in illicit drugs between all high school grades and expanding to colleges. We can also try specifically testing certain drugs instead of all illicit drugs. And this is our works cited. Thank you for listening.